Hello, it's Miss Epstein here from Dilks Academy. Welcome to Year 2 Writing Workshop. I just want to go through some ideas of how you guys can help the children at home, how we teach the children writing in school, and a few other pointers of things that we can be doing to practice and improve their writing skills. Aims of the session, I'm going to go through the year group expectations, how we teach writing in school, grammar and punctuation, spelling, handwriting, and ideas for you guys at home. Okay, the year 2 expectations are here. These basically are the targets that your child will need to meet in order to be in line by the end of year 2. It looks like a lot when you look at it like this, but it is broken up through the term. So the autumn term, as you can see, it's got things like add labels to information, use suitable words from a word bank, use a finger space. So some of them are small manageable targets, others later on become a little bit more challenging for them, but they will be supported through school throughout the year to get to that point. Year 2 is slightly different to other year groups because it's the end of a key stage, so they are assessed against national benchmarks at the end of year 2 in line with their SATs assessments. I will do a meeting about SATs nearer the time. They don't sit SATs in year 2 for writing. They are assessed on their bookwork, but they have statutory standards that they need to meet. So for a child to be working towards the expected stand by the end of the year, these are the targets that they need to meet. All of this can be looked up online if you want to look at it again later. If you just search Key Stage 1 Teacher Assessment Framework, you'll be able to access this for reading, writing, maths, and I think science is on there as well. In order to be in line with expectations, they need to do all of these targets. To be in line, it assumes they can already do what was on the working towards page previously. This all needs to be completed independently, so that means independent writing. That means not with an adult support. They're able to do it with an input from the teacher and then go off and do it by themselves in their book. It gives you a really good idea of what's expected. The spellings that it mentions are covered generally in the spellings that we teach each week that the children tested on, and also the high frequency words that we've sent home previously, all of which again you can find online. And to be working at greater depth by the end of the year, again, it assumes that your child can do everything in the working towards, everything in the working at, and at the greater depth as well. This is the more challenging parts of writing. Again, all needs to be done independently, but as I say, we will teach them through the year to make it manageable for them. It's not an expectation that all children will meet this even working out or working at greater depth. It depends on, you know, what's appropriate for your child. So don't let it become too overwhelming having a look at some of these targets if your child isn't there yet. Okay, the way that we teach writing in school, basically we use an idea, I suppose, called Talk for Writing, where we immerse the children in a text, meaning we really engage with that text. We learn a text, we might order it, we might sort it on a page to make it look correct if it's non-fiction. We learn vocabulary, etc., and then we innovate that story. So basically we change the story and make it our own, to invent our own story as such. So for example, at the beginning of the year, the children learnt the papaya that spoke. They learnt it by rote, they learned the actions, they had a story map. Then they changed the characters and changed the story to make it their own. So for example, some of them did the apple that spoke, changed the farmer character to a teacher to write their own story. That helps them to understand the sentence structure and then the structure of story. So there we go. There's an example, which was the papaya that spoke, a media unit. So that's what we're doing in year 2 at the end of this half term for December. The Man on the Moon, which was a John Lewis advert a few years ago. We've also done, or we will also do, other silent films throughout the year, or stories, book stories, not necessarily ones from the Pye Corbett Talk for Writing scheme, but we use the same model. So they will still learn that story, whether it's a video or a book, in detail, or in the non-fiction case we did previously, they learn all the features of non-fiction, various non-fiction texts, to pick up on how it should be laid out and how the writing should sound and the genre itself, to reinvent their own. If your child is learning a story in school, it might be a really nice idea for them to, you know, show you the actions and tell you that story at home to help them to practice that and embed it further. They can draw the story map be surprised how much they can remember, I would imagine. Or even practice writing the original story at home. So if they've learnt the papaya that spoke in detail, there's no reason they can't practice the original story. And then, as I say, innovate, we box it up. So we use a box it up plan, which basically is just a way that we do planning in school, where they swap the character or they swap a certain part of the story for their own version. So they're not expected to do it off the top of their head. There's not a time when they're expected to just make up a story from nowhere. They will always have that support on the structure of a previous story to sort of cling to. The writing is done over a number of days. So in a lesson, the teacher will stand at the front and model writing. So we will model the handwriting, we will model the features that we want them to include, for example, adjectives or adverbs, question marks, exclamation marks, conjunctions, whatever it is we want them to include in that particular day, we will model at the front of the room. It's often done in year 2 with colour coding to help the children really recognise those features and further embed that grammar as well. The children will be involved in that activity and they will have their hand up to add information and give ideas to the teacher when they're writing. Children will then be sent to their tables and they will write that independently. We'll normally do over 3 to 4 days of writing piece, or a longer piece. If it's a short piece of writing, for example, a character description or a couple of paragraphs that they're expected to write, we might do that in 1 day. But they are expected to sit and write in silence, well, more or less in silence, for about 20 minutes. So if they can do that at home, then that will help them to maintain that concentration. Some children are given that support in school where they will create a sentence together with the teacher or in a small group. So if that's the case for your child, that's absolutely fine. And they can have that support at home as well. But some will be able to do 15 to 20 minutes by themselves. Grammar and punctuation is also taught during that shared write that I talked about before. So while I'm writing the story, the children will tell me how to use the punctuation. So a lot of the time I might forget a capital letter or forget full stops or commas, etc. And the children put their hand up and be happy to correct me to do that. If you guys are writing at home as parents and carers, a really good way to test your child and their understanding of punctuation is to forget it yourself, and they will definitely tell you what you need to do. The targets at the front of their book, which I showed you at the beginning, the year 2 targets, and also the statutory targets will give you an idea of what they're expected to include in their writing. Children are assessed half-termly on grammar, punctuation, spelling, and they will be assessed in their SATs at the end of the year also. Again, the spelling test refers to mainly the rules that we teach each week and a few of those high frequency standard words. But again, that is assessed in their writing in their books as well. And grammar is tested on things like word classes, for example, what is a noun, what is an adjective, circle the noun, or write a verb that makes sense in this sentence. Conjunctions, which are joining words and, but, because, so, etc. Commas in a list, they have to have understanding of that, and apostrophes, capital letters, exclamation marks, etc. Children do spelling sessions in school most days. We then practice that rule throughout the week, which is also on spelling shared and given home to you guys each week to practice as well. Those spellings are then tested on a Friday. Sometimes I like to give them a little bit of a curveball and do some bonus questions to see if they're able to apply that rule to unlearned spellings, ones that they can just apply the rule that they haven't necessarily practiced every day at home, to see whether they've really understood it. I've seen a huge improvement in the amount of children who are really engaging with that at home, which has been amazing. So thank you for your support with that, and please keep that up. It's really helping the children, not just with their writing, but also their reading. So that's been a really, really good thing. One thing I would say is it's very easy for children to just forget the spelling the following week. So probably a good idea would be to keep those spelling sheets that we give you weekly, or give the children weekly, and just keep an eye on them and practice them over time. So for example, I know they did the LE spelling and then they did the EL spelling, etc. Practice those over time so that they don't forget. Handwriting. So this is sort of a sample of what the handwriting looks like in school, this particular slide. It is cursive, and it is it's one that doesn't curl with the G and the descenders like the Y's and stuff. We don't loop those. It will show you which letters join and which letters don't join. not all children need to be able to join by the end of year 2, as you would have seen in their targets. For example, the greater depth children are expected to be able to begin to use diagonal strokes into their writing, but they're not expected to join consistently. From nursery or reception, the children were taught to do the pre-join, so they are aware of how those are used. But beginning to join would be a really good thing. Practicing handwriting is a really simple task at home. They can do 5 minutes here or there of just a particular join. Lots of the children struggle with A, D and B. They sort of swirl them round rather than actually following the steps. So that's a really good one to practice and make sure that letter formation is correct. Sizing of letters is also really important. To be able to be an inline writer by the end of year 2, children's writing needs to be consistently of the correct sizing. So that means letters that go under the line, like P, J, G, etc., do go under the line, don't sit on top. And those ascenders, the tall letters such as H, L, D, B, T, etc., are tall and go all the way to the top of the line. So that's something they can be practicing at home. A great way to get them engaged with their new spelling words also is to practice the handwriting. So on this particular slide, like I mentioned, some of the letters are ones that I'm finding are not being correctly formed all the time. So they're in red just to give you a bit of an idea of ones that the children are finding trickier or use less. So F, maybe they're not using as much. K, they're not using necessarily correctly all the time. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of what those are. Things you guys can do at home to support your children with writing. I've mentioned a few already. The weekly homework tasks. Sometimes not necessarily every week, but kind of every other week to an extent, we're doing a reading paper or a reading activity and then maybe a grammar activity. The grammar activities, if your child is really not understanding that, please let us know, or if there's something that you guys can do at home to really enforce that, then that would be great. Part of the reason we do the homework the way we're doing now is to help you to know what they're working on in school. So it's a really good way to help you to support them. So please use that as a bit of a signpost of what we are learning in school. Just to mention as well, actually, this is not necessarily to do with writing, but it is to do with homework. A lot of our year group, more than others particularly, actually are still giving the homework in on paper. And although that is an option if you do not have access to the internet at home or a computer, ideally we are trying to reduce the amount of paper that goes between the school and home, mainly for the safeguarding of the children and the staff, etc., for the movement between households. If possible, if you need a printed version, that's fine. If possible, if you could upload a photograph of your child's work instead, just to avoid that coming backwards and forwards, that would be really, really helpful. Through Purple Mash, or if you're really struggling with that, it can be emailed to admin.da@catrust.org.uk. So that is an option, but Purple Mash is ideal, really. Spelling practice. The children are expected to practice their spelling 7 times in a week. It doesn't have to be for a long time. They can do 5 minutes a night on Spelling Shed, and the impact is absolutely huge. So that's a really good thing to be doing. Another thing that would help them is writing regularly at home, whether it's just handwriting, whether it's a diary, whether it's thank you letters to family and friends for Christmas and birthday gifts, for example, whether it is a story based on what they've learned in school, whatever it is that you can get them to write, the better. And as I've said, writing for purpose. So, for example, thank you letters. The more they're writing at home, the more it's going to improve their handwriting and their confidence. Something that also children are doing a lot of in school at the moment, because they're still not sure where those full stops go, is we write a simple part of a text. It can just be copied from a story without punctuation, just a few sentences, and have your children have a look and see if they can put those sentences, the capital letters and the full stops in. So today, for example, I rewrote a section from our guided reading book without capital letters, full stops, inverted commas for speech, commas, etc. I left everything out, and the children worked in pairs to try and put those full stops in. Little 5 minutes activities like that would be helpful. In addition to that, reading. The impact of the reading at home is huge on the children as well. It gives them a confidence that, you know, is hard to develop without understanding of stories. They're able to pick up on vocabulary. They can recognise how the grammar and punctuation is used by a professional writer. They'll also hopefully begin to pick up on how paragraphs look on a page, and you can start asking your children, oh, why is there a new paragraph? Why have they started a new line? Who's speaking? How do you know? Why is there inverted commas or speech marks there? If you spot a list, oh look, there's commas. Why are there commas? Really talking about those targets that are mentioned on the previous slide. And apostrophes. Why is there an apostrophe for the girl's dress, but not for there were 3 girls? Why is there an apostrophe for the S on the first one and not the second one? And see if they can unpick and understand that. Other than that, if you've got any questions, please speak to your child's class teacher or put a note in the diary. Hopefully this has been helpful, and the targets at least have given you a bit of an idea of what we're working towards in school. And thank you for your continued support. The more they're practicing at home, it really is making a huge difference. So hopefully you're finding Spelling Shed and the other activities really, really helpful. And thank you again. Take care.